Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. A lot has happened on Capitol Hill since the last time Donald Trump was there. There was the deadly insurrection that he incited. There was the Biden inauguration that he skipped. There was the record-setting second impeachment that he faced for the deadly insurrection he incited. And there was a time in the immediate aftermath of all that, late January, February, March, it seemed he may never be welcome back. But we know how that turned out. Today, the former president and his 34 felony convictions trekked to Capitol Hill at the invitation of the House and Senate Republicans, where he was received like a different Don, a crime Don, seeking not supporters, but accomplices and co-conspirators.
They're using us as a bad example of democracy, and they're getting away with murder, and we're not going to let it happen. You're all either elected or you're going to be elected again and reelected, and I'm with every one of you, and you know that. I'll be with you always. This is an outstanding group of people. I'm with them 1,000%. They're with me 1,000%. We agree just about on everything, and if there isn't, we work it out.
Now, the term kiss the ring has been used so often with Trump, it's virtually lost all meaning, but it really was on display in Washington today. Everything about this appearance was meant to convey the idea of Republican Party unity, and they all performed it like incredibly strenuously. That unity on Trump's terms, of course, essentially remaking the party of Lincoln into a mafia-type operation with him at the very top. The man who was just convicted in a conspiracy to pay off former paramours because he feared their stories would complicate his election campaign. A man found liable for sexual assault of exactly the kind that he brags about. A man who surrounded himself with lackeys who've also been convicted or charged with serious crimes, from Steve Bannon to Peter Navarro to Paul Manafort to Roger Stone to Michael Flynn. Trump himself has pardoned or commuted the sentences of many of those men. Of course, they never snitched. They're not rats. Because Trump explicitly envisions his interactions with people in these sort of organized crime transactional terms. You do for me, and if I'm in a good mood, I'm happy with your performance, you'll get a cut. And the Republican Party has signed up to be a part of this. That was on display today in his discussions with Capitol Hill Republicans behind closed doors. As sources told Punchbowl News reporter Jake Sherman, Trump singled out House Republicans who had voted to impeach him, saying out of the 10 that impeached, only one is left. Now, as Sherman pointed out, that was wrong. There are actually 2 left. But this was Trump basically doing his impression of Robert De Niro's Al Capone in The Untouchables, pointing out all the people in his gang who flipped on him. A sort of snitches get stitches, stay on my good side message to the foot soldiers. If you think that kind of pressure does not work, look at the outgoing Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Remember what he said about Trump in the aftermath of the Capitol insurrection?
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. This was an intensifying crescendo of conspiracy theories orchestrated by an outgoing president who seemed determined to either overturn the voters' decision or else torch our institutions on the way out.
And yet, here was McConnell today, the old man, supplicant, submissive, bending over to kiss the ring, giving a breezy endorsement of Trump's Capitol Hill pilgrimage.
Senator, how was it seeing the former president?
We had a good meeting. Yeah, but we shook hands a few times. He took questions from the audience, and it was an entirely positive session.
Great work, Mitch. Now, despite all that, plenty of those adoring Republican lawmakers were feckless enough to anonymously drip out details of Trump's backroom talk to Sherman and other reporters, because, again, you can never underestimate just how cowardly they are. For instance, when Trump told the House Republicans today that Milwaukee, where we're having our convention, is a horrible city. Another Republican source told reporters that Trump was rambling to the crowd, said it was like, and I quote, talking to your drunk uncle at the family reunion. Of course, in public, those anonymous Republican sources will fundamentally get in line, kiss the ring, give the Dom whatever he wants. And maybe you think this is all being too literal on my part. You know, hyperbolic with the metaphors. Crime bosses, accomplices. Surely he doesn't explicitly embrace actual criminal gangs and racketeering and violence as a campaign feature. But this is now actually part of this campaign. Listen closely to this, because I still can't get over this. It flew almost completely beneath the radar of the mainstream media. I'll include us with this, with the exception of the Associated Press and a few others. But it was on display at his campaign rally last month in the Bronx when he shared the stage with a few supportive guests.
Rapper Chef G. Does everybody know Chef? Where is Chef G? Where is he? Come on up, fellas. Rapper Sleepy Hollow.
They always gonna whisper your accomplishments and shout your failures. Trump gonna shout the wins for all of us.
Make America great again.
Okay, so Trump's doing a rally in the Bronx. To Trump, those rappers are valuable political allies. To the district attorney in Brooklyn, they are also criminal defendants in a sweeping, extensive gang case where prosecutors say they gave material support to a Crips gang during a violent street war with another gang.
Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez says the gang members used more than 30 guns to threaten or eliminate their rivals. In total, Gonzalez says there was 1 murder, 4 attempted murders, and 12 non-fatal shootings.
What we allege and what we learned during the course of this investigation is that Chef G used a lot of the money that he earned to help facilitate further gang activity. He encouraged gang members to participate in violent crimes.
Chef G, who's the rapper who was on stage with Donald Trump that he invited up there, prosecutors allege Chef G threw a party at Manhattan Steakhouse for gang members to celebrate a drive-by shooting in October 2020 in which one alleged rival gang member was killed and 5 others were injured. Murder. Again, alleged. Innocent until proven guilty in our system. But did you hear all that? You imagine what the New York Post would have done with this headline if those 2 gentlemen had shown up at a rally for AOC, or if President Joe Biden had introduced them on stage. But the fact of the matter is that the Republican Party, conservatives, have a criminal as their preferred nominee and is embracing a criminal model for the enterprise that is now the Republican Party. Surprise, there are even more undisclosed private jet trips. Tonight, we're learning that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas took at least 3 private jet trips, paid for by his very generous benefactor, billionaire Republican Harlan Crow, according to an ongoing investigation by Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Tonight, ProPublica is reporting the newly revealed flights add to the picture of Thomas's frequent use of Crow's jet for personal travel, allowing the justice to fly in the style of the ultra-wealthy. Crow owns a high-end Bombardier Global 5000. That sounds nice. A jet that can cost over $10,000 per flight hour to charter, according to the charter company estimates. And Thomas has repeatedly flown to a destination and backing it on the same day. That sounds like nice way to go. In a statement, Thomas's lawyer said the trips, quote, fell under the personal hospitality exemption and was not required to be disclosed. Justin Elliott is one of the reporters from ProPublica who broke the story, and many other stories about the undisclosed gifts to both Justice Thomas and Justice Samuel Alito. He and the rest of his team at ProPublica won a Pulitzer for the reporting on the Supreme Court last year, and he joins me now. Congratulations on that Pulitzer, by the way.
Thank you.
Well earned. All right, 3 more trips. What have we learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about this that's so striking to me is just the scale of it. I mean, we're really looking at a picture where Harlan Crow's private jet, as you said, Global 5000, which I'm told is a particularly nice type of private jet, was just at the disposal of Justice Thomas. I mean, there's multiple incidents where, for example, flying from Washington, D.C. to San Jose, California, staying there for a few hours and then turning around and going back in the same day. That's happened repeatedly. So, and we see the jet going from where it's based in Dallas to D.C. to pick up the justice. And so this adds to a very long list. And I think the picture is you have a billionaire political donor really in a real way subsidizing the life of a justice.
Yeah, and basically, I mean, the new deal tells they don't make clear the purpose of the trips. They include a May 27 trip to St. Louis, from St. Louis to Kalispell, Montana, location of Glacier Park International Airport, then from Montana to Dallas 2 days later. He was scheduled to be in St. Louis at the time for a speech. In one instance, he flew from the East Coast to San Jose, returned home later that day. In another, he took a round-trip flight from Washington, D.C. to Savannah, Georgia. I mean, yeah, this is the kind of thing you only really get to do if you're a billionaire. Just like, this is how, like, Taylor Swift or Elon Musk, that's how they get around.
Right. I mean, the San Jose round trip alone, again, seemingly for maybe some kind of lunch, we don't know what it was for still, that could easily cost well over $100,000 just the flight. So, probably like double the median income that an American makes in a year. So it's an extraordinary amount of money, and this is on top of
$100,000 flight.
Yeah, and last week, Justice Thomas actually, after some of our reporting, amended some prior years' financial disclosure forms to disclose other things that Harlan Crow has paid for: hotels and lodging, and a vacation in Indonesia, a trip to California, and that's the third time he's done that in the last 10 or 15 years.
Now, to be clear, these three ones no one knew about and no one reported.
Yeah, these are totally new to us. I mean,
you had no idea.
I had no idea. I mean,
but I'm pretty sure. Let me just say, this is it, right? I mean, this has to be totally it. There's no way there's anything else. I think we have an absolute definitive accounting.
I mean, look, some of the reporting we did, it took, myself and some coworkers months of reporting to piece together these trips and other gifts that Justice Thomas and Justice Alito also got. We don't have subpoena power. The Senate Judiciary Committee does. They said today that there's going to be a fuller report of their findings of this investigation coming out in the summer. So I would not at all be surprised if there's more revelations in that.
They subpoenaed Leonard Leo as well, who basically told him to, go
pound sand.
Thank you for stopping me from saying what I was going to say. To go pound sand, and I don't know what's happening there, but Harlan Crow, they subpoenaed, and he's cooperating, right? They're getting this from Harlan Crow, I think.
Right. This is from Harlan Crow. What happened was they authorized the subpoena, didn't actually issue it, and it became sort of a leverage in their negotiations with his lawyers, and they came to this deal where he's given them information about the last 7 years, potentially not just travel, potentially other things too. I think we'll only find out when the full investigation comes out later this summer.
We're going to have to update our bar chart. Can we show the bar chart? My favorite bar chart. It's a tough one to read. It's really hard to see. Let's see, which one is Thomas? Let me scan there. Oh, right, there he is on the left. So we might need to raise up that bar after we price these ones in. Maybe this summer we'll get more pricing. Can I get your response, since I have you here, to something Justice Alito said about your reporting, because he talks about you, and I want you to be able to respond directly. This is something that he said recently, surreptitiously recorded about ProPublica. Take a listen.
There are groups that are very well funded by ideological groups that have spearheaded these attacks. That's what it is.
Like who? Sorry.
ProPublica gets a lot of money, and they have spent a fortune investigating crimes on this.
Have you spent a fortune on, are these ideological attacks, what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it was frankly disturbing to hear this, because it's pure speculation based on no evidence. As one of the 2 or 3 reporters that did this work, I can tell you how it started, which was not, we're going to report on Justice Thomas and Justice Alito. It was, we're going to report on how Supreme Court justices are spending their time when they're not at the court. It started with a stack of documents of travel records, no names of the justices.
Wow.
And we pieced together that it was Justice Thomas who was taking private jets around. We took a hard look at some of the Democratic appointed justices and just have simply not found anything equivalent.
Well, again, if we could put up that bar chart just for a second. Again, it is hard to find the signal from the noise in that chart. It takes a lot of energy just to uncover that one on the left.
Right. I mean, if somebody out there knows about George Soros funding Justice Kagan's life, I would love to report it, and you can find my contact information on all of our stories.
Be a hell of a scoop. Justin Elliott, great reporting. Thank you. President Joe Biden is in Italy today, meeting with the world leaders for the 50th G7 summit. This morning, the group posed for the classic family photo. Now, this version of that picture, edited by political scientist Ian Bremer, reveals something very important about the leaders of the world's biggest economies. They are all really unpopular. Those numbers above their heads are their net disapproval ratings, with Joe Biden actually coming in second, underwater by only 18.5 points. And there is one big reason why these leaders are all so unpopular. All of the G7 nations and most of the world have faced levels of inflation not seen for decades. Of course, none of the leaders are directly responsible for that. As you can see, the jump in inflation coincided with the end of the pandemic. It was a result of an enormous surge in pent-up demand amidst a pandemic-induced constraint on supply. But voters, totally understandably and rationally, hate inflation. It's been 3 or 4 years of prices going up and up, and they blame the incumbent party. Here in the U.S., the Consumer Price Index, a measurement of inflation, hit a whopping 9% in the summer of 2022, and we've actually recovered relatively well since then, better than many of our G7 counterparts. The index dropped down to 3.3% as of yesterday's report. Now, that, of course, crucially, is the rate of increase, right? Prices are going up at a slower rate. Cumulatively, prices are still way up here and everywhere. But the truth is that Joe Biden didn't really have a lot to do with the fact this line went up or that it went down. That's mostly circumstances outside his control, the Fed. Now, I will say this. Joe Biden's administration has tried very hard to cut costs for Americans wherever they can, taking steps to lower prescription drug costs, canceling student debt, getting rid of all kinds of junk fees at airlines and banks, for example. But for the most part, being real here, the rise and fall of inflation was a result of external factors like the pandemic and the decisions of the Federal Reserve outside of President Biden's control. And so voters might look at that and say, well, then, why does it really matter who the next president is? It's sort of coming down on its own. It matters because Donald Trump is running on the most explicitly inflationary platform in modern history.
I think we should have a ring around the collar, as they say. I think when companies come in and they dump their products in the United States, they should pay automatically, let's say, a 10% tax. I do like the 10% for everybody.
Trump's proposal, a 10% across-the-board tariff on all foreign goods, would be basically a sales tax. It would raise prices for American consumers, 10% on everything from avocados to iPhones. Now, if you think that's bad, today, behind closed doors, outside of the view of cameras, Donald Trump proposed one of the most deranged policies I have ever heard. He told Republican lawmakers behind closed doors he wants to eliminate the income tax and replace it entirely with tariffs, effectively taking us back to the 19th century. This idea makes as much sense as ripping up the entire interstate highway system and replacing it with canals. Economist Paul Krugman did some back-of-the-envelope math, estimates the policy, quote, would require an average tariff of 133%. Not 10%. That is a 133% tax hike on all imported goods. That would be passed on to consumers, a sales tax of 133%. It would cost Americans hundreds of billions of dollars. Former senior policy advisor of the National Economic Council, Brendan Duke, explained further, quote, another way to put Trump's latest incredibly unworkable idea, one, get this, it would raise taxes by $5,000 for a typical family, if you're a working person who buys stuff. It would cut taxes for the average family in the top 0.1% by $1.5 million. This proposal would jack up everything, everywhere, for normal people, crushing the average American's wallet while giving the wealthiest folks who no longer have to pay an income tax and don't buy that much relative to their income an enormous windfall, millions and millions of dollars. This is the man who has a 50-50 shot at taking the White House, in large part because of the macroeconomic conditions that produced high inflation. And he is seriously, quite seriously and earnestly, currently running on the most insanely inflationary platform I've ever seen. Higher prices, higher taxes for everyone. It would make what we've seen over the last few years look like nothing.